Hello, Antiochian men. This is Michael Bocklig, and I have a very special interview for everyone today. I have Father Philip Begley, the pastor of St. Ignatius Antiochian Orthodox Church in Franklin, Tennessee. Just so happened to be the site of our fall retreat that just happened here not too long ago. Father Philip, thank you very much for joining us on this interview.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Father Philip, I wanted to start by giving everyone some insight into how we already knew each other before I even moved into this diocese. My godfather is your father. So that is something that I've shared with only a few people. Father Tom Begley, who is very dear to me and has been just an incredible godfather, always keeping in touch with me and being there for me. I know that you, I believe, have two brothers. I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about your family and let everyone know kind of what our connection was from your point of view.
Sure. So, like you said, my dad's an Antiochian Orthodox priest. Currently, he's living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He goes to St. George and West St. Paul, Minnesota. And then I have two brothers, like you mentioned, who are both Tondred readers in the Orthodox Church. One of them lives in Kansas City, Missouri, and goes to St. Basil's Church. The other is at the church with my dad in West St. Paul. So, as you know, it's kind of difficult to build relationships with your family because you get sent to different places. As a PK, you can end up, on the opposite end of the country from the rest of your family. And for us in Iowa, we were really far away from my extended family. Most of my family lived in Michigan or New Jersey, and we were in Iowa for most of my upbringing. And then Minnesota. So that's a challenge, but it's always helpful when you have spiritual family, right? So like our home parish was a great benefit to me. The people there, because my grandpa and grandma were far away, the elderly people of St. Thomas and Sioux City, my home parish, were essentially like my grandmas and grandpas. And then the older people were like my uncles and aunts as well. And then all the kids my age were like my brothers and sisters. So I had a spiritual family and then the extended spiritual family, like yourself. I know we had some contact throughout the years. I remember seeing you at my dad's 25th anniversary celebration a little while back while I was still in college. So just having those additional relationships really helped. Because to be so distant from family is difficult. And it's one of the crosses we carry as clergy families, but very blessed to be a part of all the parishes that I have been part of in my life. St. Thomas in Sioux City, St. George West St. Paul, St. George and South Glens Falls, my first parish assignment, and now here at St. Ignatius.
That's wonderful. And that's something that I will always be able to connect with you on, is being a PK, a priest kid. I hear that so often. I heard that growing up is, oh, you're a PK. And there's a lot that goes with that you and I definitely have some insights on. I wanted to talk about the retreat itself, the fall retreat that was at St. Ignatius. And it was just a wonderful event. Before I even talk about the events, though, I have to say, I wasn't really planning on working so much at the fall retreat, but Elias Abugazala, he intended to be there for registration and check-in, and we had a small storm called Hurricane Dorian that went into the Florida, Carolinas area, and so it ended up causing a situation where Elias couldn't make it. So I know he was kind of desperate to try to find someone, and I was happy to volunteer. Didn't quite realize how much work that was going to be when I volunteered, but I was happy to do it. I was really very blessed to be in that position, because ultimately my wife and I worked the registration table, and there were others from your church that helped us out as well, which we were very grateful for. But it gave us a chance to meet so many people and to greet everyone as they were coming in, something that I hadn't originally planned for, but it ended up being a wonderful blessing just to put faces with names. And I think that kind of speaks to one of the most important reasons for these retreats, is for us to have fellowship, to get to know each other, and to kind of see that universal church coming together in these spiritual retreats. And I was wondering if you would just comment on that.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I'm really glad that that's the experience that you had, because when we were talking, Bishop Nicholas and I, early on about a theme, What we ended up going with was the one from Matthew 12, house divided against itself shall not stand. And the point was, we really wanted to emphasize unity, unity within the diocese, unity within our parishes and within our homes.
Mm.
So to see everybody coming together and to have some spiritual talks specifically about marriage and family, to have children's activities, to see a lot of families coming to this event, despite all the complications, like you mentioned, the hurricane, etc., was really heartwarming. I was really pleased to see so many families together, and it made us really feel like a diocese family, which really was the goal from the outset. That was the plan, to try and make it as family oriented as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And those talks that you were referring to, the first one of those was by Deacon Michael Hyatt, who is one of the many deacons at your church. You're blessed with a full clergy, and he is a wonderful talent, and he has such great experience. His talk was titled, "And the Two Shall Become One: 7 Practical Strategies for Achieving Greater Unity in Marriage." And I have to say, I personally got a lot out of that talk. It was not just enjoyable and edifying, it was one of those talks that sticks with you. There were several things that he had mentioned in his talk that I'll never forget, and that really went a long way to help my wife and I in our marriage. And I'm just assuming that a lot of others felt the same. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that talk or if you received feedback from others, but I was hoping you would talk a little bit about that first retreat session.
Well, I had asked Deacon Michael to be one of the speakers at the retreat because we, again, knew it was going to be about marriage and family and about unity. And the reason why I was reaching out to him specifically was the previous fall, he had been leading an adult Sunday school class here at St. Ignatius, and they were reading through Sacred Marriage and discussing it, and just talking about the liturgical service of marriage, the theology behind it. And he and his wife, Gail, led the class together, and they had that personal experience to draw from as well, many, many years of being married. So I think he just brought a lot of practical things to the table, and he just made it really accessible for people. And I had excellent feedback from that talk. I think you could tell by the number of questions after the lecture just how much it really touched people. I think it really was something that affected them. And even in my mind, there were a lot of things I thought, I talk to people in premarital counseling sessions about these things before they get married, how to manage conflict, all those kinds of things. And then I thought, there's some times when I'm always telling people what to do in their marriages, but I'm not perfect in my own. So it was humbling for me to be able to hear his experiences and to get a sense of, there are areas where I can improve as well.
Definitely. And I can so relate to that. I know that a lot of times we think we figured something out, but the truth is we really haven't. Anytime we think
Exactly.
we mastered something, and I got a lot out of that. The next retreat session talk just so happened to be one that I was a part of, which is still hard for me to believe that I was even asked to be involved with it. But I was very humbled and very grateful for that opportunity. And Father Han Jacobsi, who is our spiritual advisor at the Antiochian Men, he and I gave a talk, and it was kind of a unique talk because it was 2 people talking instead of just one speaker. And so I was hoping that that worked well. I have received some good feedback after that talk already, and we have that talk actually posted on our YouTube channel for people to watch if they're interested, if they weren't able to attend the retreat. I was interested in your perspective, how you think that worked, having 2 speakers, and if you've heard any feedback from anyone on that, or if you yourself had any comments on that talk.
Sure. And again, let me give you a little bit of a background. I mean, you know it, but the viewers probably don't know it. I want to go back to Raleigh for a minute, to the PLC this past summer, and just the way things happened at the first Amen meeting really moved me. To see you getting elected as president of the group, and then seeing Father Hans assigned as spiritual advisor to the group, and the 2 of you getting up and talking. And this wasn't scripted at all, right? I mean, it just
Right.
kind of was like movement of the spirit. The 2 of you were so on the same page. And this thing just flowed out, and it was so wonderful. The experiences that you shared about married life, the advice that he could give from the practical standpoint of someone who's been counseling young men through difficult experiences and how to be a man in our current society. To see those things that you said, wow, this is awesome. Like, we need to do this again, and we need to do it in front of a broader audience. So bringing you guys to St. Ignatius for the fall retreat and having you do that in Raleigh and including everybody, I think was really important, just so they got a sense of sort of the mission of the Amen group.
Well, that's wonderful. And again, I'm very humbled and grateful to have even been given that opportunity. So thank you, Father. And I can tell you that just Father Hans has been such a wonderful influence on my life. And I've heard from many other men in the diocese who have been able to now get to know him through some of the videos that we've posted, through interacting with him at the fall retreat. I brought a few men from St. Nicholas Church here in Springdale with me, and they really enjoyed meeting him, getting to know him. And again, that's what these retreats are all about. So I enjoyed giving that talk. It was definitely an experience I've never had before. And to even give it, especially in the church, in St. Ignatius Church, I think that might have been the only speaking session that was in the church. And I don't know if it was really planned that way. It just happened that way. And it's such a beautiful church. And I would encourage anyone that is traveling or is visiting the Nashville area, it is worth the drive to go a short drive south to Franklin and visit, and to see the iconography and just hearing the music, especially at the liturgy that I attended there with the choir. It just sounded so beautiful. So definitely encourage anyone to visit if they can.
Thank you. And just to give you a little additional comment, feedback was very positive about that talk as well. As a matter of fact, I had one priest come and mention to me that he liked how there was a change of pace between that and the other lectures, that there was kind of a dialogue between you and Father Hans, and it helped to kind of mix things up a little bit. So
yes, well, that was my hope. That's good to hear. I'm glad that came out. That was one of our goals when I worked with Father Hans ahead of time. So thank you for that. The third retreat speaking session was just an incredible talk by Father James Girgis, who's one of the priests in our diocese. And the title of his talk was Becoming Good and Faithful Servants. And that talk really stuck with me. His delivery of the message of what it meant to be a servant. I didn't even know that he was going to be talking about a lot of the same things that Father Hans and I talked about. One of those that jumps out is obedience. And what he talked about in that talk really helped to kind of build on what Deacon Michael Hyatt started with in that first talk. And then what Father Hans and I started talking about with the values of the Antiochian men. Father James just built on that even more. What did you think of his talk? And did you get any feedback from anyone on that as well?
Sure. Well, again, giving you a little bit of background, I am eternally grateful to Father James. We had a last minute change in the schedule, and Sayedna was like, we need to find a speaker, Father Philip. And I said, okay. So I'm opening up my directory, calling around the diocese, looking for a brother to help. And I reached out to Father James because, as I mentioned during the fall retreat, he and I had been in the same diocese in upstate New York for a couple of years. So knowing him and having read through his book, The Ancient Paths, published by Ancient Faith, I was like, this is a guy who can take some of that complex theology and distill it down to something that's very practical and very easy to access by our people. So I reached out to him. He was more than happy to help. His talk was excellent. All those things you mentioned about obedience and examples coming from the stories of the Desert Fathers, I think him being able to put that together in such a short span of time, I mean, he might have had 2-3 weeks, I want to say, to put all that together. It was phenomenal. And again, feedback was very strong. And I think, again, you saw the reaction from the crowd. You had lots of people asking questions. I mean, we could have gone on probably for another 10 or 15 minutes with the Q&A, but we just had to keep things moving in the schedule. But I was very happy, and I think it was very well received.
Definitely. The fourth and final talk that was given as of these bigger retreat sessions was given by somebody that I think that you know personally, Marcus Jerome, who gave a talk about marriage. So we had two bookends. We had Deacon Michael Hyatt, and then we had Marcus Jerome talking about marriage at the beginning and the end of the retreat. And this one was a very thorough talk, and it was titled Holy Matrimony and the United Household. And the importance of the proper perspective of what the sacrament of marriage is, I think, is what came through in his talk. He was very thorough. He's a scholar. He knows his stuff, and what he presented had such depth to it that I know a lot of people probably learned quite a bit in his talk. And I was wondering if you talk a little bit about what he talked about.
Yeah, and again, Marcus and I have a relationship that goes back to seminary. He was one of my classmates at Holy Cross. And when I moved here to St. Ignatius 2 years ago, one of the first people that Father Stephen mentioned to me within the pan-Orthodox community, if you will, in Nashville, was Marcus Jerome, because he's a certified marriage and family therapist. So having that asset here is just a tremendous benefit to all the clergy. When we have couples that are struggling with marital issues, they can go to him and know that it's not sort of the generic marriage counselor, it's a real Orthodox counselor, and you know the theology that you're going to get from him. You know that he's going to know how to apply that theology. So it's just a great benefit to have him in the area. So knowing that Deacon Michael was doing that first talk, like you mentioned, I thought, hey, let's get a little bit of the psychological end. And so bringing in Marcus, I think, really complemented that foundation that Deacon Michael laid with the first talk, and kind of served as a bookend, like you said. The fact that he was going back specifically to patristic sources to bring out all these different points that he's making and linking them to modern psychology, and that was just perfect.
Yeah.
To show that sometimes, science and religion are compatible, and that this can be used in effective ways when we minister to our people. I thought he gave a great talk. And again, it was humbling for me sitting there, because there were so many things that I was just checking off, going, you know what, as a husband, as a father, I can do better at this, I can do better at that. But it was practical advice about how to, really work with your spouse and kind of keep that love going in your relationship. I think, like he mentioned many times, giving bids for someone's attention, I think, was the kind of language that he used, where you want to do little things without someone asking. It's not always good if our wives are asking us to do something, and it's only when we're asked that we do it. It's more like, no, anticipate the need of your spouse. Do something out of love, something that's not anticipated. And little things, even if it's just like showing up with flowers, something that makes a difference like that. I mean, those little things really do add up and help a relationship. So little things like that, I think, were just really poignant points that he made, at least when I was listening to him.
Absolutely. And speaking of the different kinds of events that are at these kinds of retreats, I was really encouraged to see that there wasn't just speaking events. There was workshops. There were things going on with chanting. People could go and do a chanting workshop. There were things with Sunday school, learning about how to do Christian education in an Orthodox church. And then there was a really special workshop with iconography and making glass icons. And I didn't participate in it myself, but I did pop in there and I did look at what was happening, and there were a lot of people participating. And I thought that was a very unique workshop that I'd never seen at one of these kinds of events before. With all the workshops that were planned, what I loved is that there was something for everybody. You could really pick and choose what you wanted to do. I know you were probably popping in and out of the different ones to make sure they were going smoothly. And I was wondering if you would maybe just give us one or two takeaways from what you saw as you went into those different workshops.
Sure. Well, starting with the iconography workshop, I was just thrilled to see how many people were there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably around 40 to 50 had registered for that particular workshop.
Yeah.
And to see all the different ages within that workshop. I mean, you had little kids to full-on adults, all participating in this, and it really turned out beautifully. Maybe at the end I can actually go find one. There's one additional icon that was left here. Elena did it herself and left it here, but I can kind of show you the final end product of what they were working on. There were Sunday school workshops. One was done by Anna Sarah Farha that focused specifically on sort of that junior high, middle school curriculum. We also had an introduction to Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, which is the Sunday school program we use here at St. Ignatius. And I think that's getting more publicity lately and kind of growing, getting a little bit more attention in the Archdiocese. So Anne-Marie McCullum gave that, and I had a lot of clergy talk to me about it and go up to her about it afterwards and kind of pursue and say, I want to know more about this. So I think there's interest in maybe doing smaller workshops like that within the parishes themselves, hopefully, in the future. There was also a chant workshop that was offered by the teens in the main church. And I was kind of going in and out, like you said, getting ready for Great Vespers, but just getting bits and pieces of it, and to see, again, a very diverse crowd attending that, and to see young guys, probably in their late teens, leading that workshop, who know the theory, who know Byzantine notation, who really have a heart for it, who are just so excited for the worship of our church. That is just so encouraging to see. And I know Sayedna is really trying to encourage the teens as well throughout the diocese to get more involved. And that's one of the key ways that we've done it here at St. Ignatius. Aidan Wilson is one of our chanters, and he was helping lead that workshop. So I'm proud of him and the progress he's made. I mean, he really just started doing that, at least chanting liturgically, probably shortly after I got here. So to see that growth within a couple of years is just astounding and a great blessing.
Definitely. And you mentioned the teens, and it was very encouraging to see the youth and how talented they are and how much they're motivated to worship in Byzantine chant and how good they are at it. It really humbled me a little bit. It showed me how far I have to go because I'm trying to learn how to chant. Yeah. Well, it was wonderful to be humbled in that way because it really it shows you where the bar is. It's a little higher than I initially thought, which is a good motivation. And with
like Sayedna says, I mean, we're always trying to take things up a notch, right, spiritually, and he's doing it. And that's one of the advantages of doing events like this and offering so much. I mean, you really do want to get to a place where you're not plateauing. You're not just staying where you are and being comfortable. He's always trying to push it a little bit more to encourage further spiritual growth, and that's a good thing.
Yes. And staying on the topic of the teens, I noticed there were a lot of teen events and things that were going on simultaneously so that there was something for them. There was even some specific things carved out for the young adults, and I had a chance to participate. I think I'm still technically young adult. I might be on the border of being an older adult, but I still sat in on a great discussion with the young adults on the Saturday, which was day 2 of the retreat. And I love the fact that they were all so engaged. It looked like, just from my interaction with the young adults, they really care about their faith and they want to bring it home to something that applies to today, to the modern world, to the challenges and the struggles that they're facing. Having something for the teens was great. I think also having something for young adults to have fellowship, and just even in between the different sessions that were planned, there was always a chance for a quick fellowship. If it was 30 minutes in the fellowship hall so people could meet each other. I was really impressed with a lot of those young adults, especially with how much they have this desire to learn and this desire to apply the spiritual concepts that they're learning to their everyday life. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that as well.
I wasn't able to be in the meeting myself because I had other things to attend to, but I know Sayedna was there. And that encourages me because he recognizes that this group, which is made up of like college students and people who have just recently graduated college and started careers, that we really are at risk of losing people in that demographic. That once our kids graduate from high school, go off to college, there's a big drop-off rate. So to really be making a push in this diocese to give them attention, to hear them out, to hear what their needs are, I think he's doing a great ministry there, encouraging it. And we can't ever do enough, I think, to reach out to those young folks because there's a lot of pressures. Like I said, within college, I went through it. especially going through a religious studies program where I was not only the only Orthodox in the room, but I think sometimes just about the only Christian in some discussion groups. So I'm constantly being challenged in those situations growing up and going through college. And so I feel I can kind of relate to it because I'm not that far removed from it. Where the college setting is just going to challenge everything that your church teaches you. I mean, society challenges everything that church teaches you. So to see him really giving due attention to that is important. And I know here at St. Ignatius, it's been a struggle because a lot of times, again, with the college schedule, with people starting careers, it's tough to get everybody on the same page and meet regularly. But I really would encourage all the pastors to do that. Even if you only get a turnout of a few people, it's worth it. You have to keep trying. You have to keep pushing.
Absolutely. Father, I just had one more thing I wanted to bring up, and it wasn't necessarily something that was so much a part of the planned retreat. I know it was scheduled that we would have some different services, but during those services, especially that first one, when we attended Vespers on Friday, it was a feeling that I can't really put into words. I mentioned that, and Father Hans actually was the one that brought that up in our talk on Friday night. Just that feeling of people from all over our diocese meeting at St. Ignatius Church, there being full families. You mentioned that at the beginning of our interview. People there with their children, people there with teens, husbands and wives from all the different churches across the Southeast. We have 40 churches or so in our diocese, and knowing that so many of them were represented and people were all there together. And when we all started singing together as a church, it was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had, because that universal church came alive and you could feel it. It was a feeling that I can't put into words. It was similar at the PLC, but the PLC is a very different environment. There's so many meetings there. You're there to get a lot of work done. There's a lot of very important business meetings that have to happen. The spiritual retreats are so much different because people are there for edification and for spiritual growth. And so I would say the entire environment, I think, created a different worship experience in between events. And there was this really deep feeling that happened every time we were together in your beautiful church. I don't know if you can necessarily put into words what I'm trying to, because it is something that I think goes beyond description. But I was wondering if you could maybe comment on this and just tell me if you felt the same thing or if you heard similar things from other people.
Definitely noticed right away everybody singing together, all the participation from the congregation, and that's always good to see. But again, I want to just go back to what I said in the beginning, getting a sense that this is a family, a diocesan family, and really feeling that, because that's the moment where it matters most, right? That's the most important thing we do, is the worship of the church and liturgy on Saturday morning. So seeing everybody coming together, praying the prayers together, there was a feeling that, yeah, this is a little bit different than just your average Vespers. Having all the churches together is a good thing. And you mentioned that the spiritual retreats seem to have a little bit different feel than the Parish Life Conference, because you get a little bit more business, and that has to happen. But I will say that I think one of the things that Bishop Nicholas has in mind, at least what I gather from him, is his vision is that he wants to make the Parish Life Conferences more spiritual as well, and offer more workshops. And so it has more of that feeling that it's not so much business, but it's more about the spiritual edification, like you're saying. So if this is just a glimpse of what's to come, that's awesome.
Absolutely, it is. Well, Father Philip, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the Antiochian men for agreeing to do this interview and giving us such a great recap of what was a glorious fall retreat. Sayedna said it would be a glorious event, and it definitely was. And we are very grateful for all the work that your parish put into it. I saw many of your parishioners working behind the scenes, and I know it took a lot of people to make that happen. So again, thank you very much for everything that you all did and continue to do. And I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Our pleasure to host you all, and hopefully we'll do it again, maybe in a year or two.
Definitely. To all Antiochian men, thanks for watching this interview. We do have another spiritual retreat planned. It will be in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's planned for the last weekend of January. So we will see you in Atlanta, God willing. And please stay tuned to more interviews such as this one on our YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe and also hit that little bell icon at the top so you can be notified with updates on new videos as we post them. And thank you again, Father, for joining us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.